Welcome to Revelland. My name is Esther and I'll be your host today. In this video series, we show you how to be creative, imaginative, inspiring, and transform how you think about your music and gigs forever. Let's transform your live show into an immersive experience that is open to everyone. To make sure this video series is accessible to people with various disabilities, we'll use visual descriptions.
My name is Esther. I am a white woman with short dark blonde hair. It's tied back. I've got some gold hoops on today, wearing a navy dress with some red and white stitching on it. And I'm joined today by Stephanie Singer, who is a composition expert, creator and founder of BitterSuite. So Stephanie, can you tell us about BitterSuite and tell us about where you are today?
So my name is Stephanie Singer. I'm a white woman. I'm in my 30s. I've got long blonde hair. I've got a ring on my right hand, which is always on my right hand, wearing a blue top. I'm in New York, hot actually, and I'm in the middle of a studio which has got no AC, so I'm absolutely boiling. So BitterSuite is a company that I always describe it like I created this company by accident, just kind of with this pure urge to find something slightly different to do with live music. So the company is devoted to deepening the experience of music by creating immersive sensory experiences, which has been a little bit under challenge over the last couple of years, given COVID. What that really means is, in our traditional format, we would work with 30 dancers, a chef and a perfumer, and every audience member would get blindfolded and paired with a dancer who guides that audience member through a choreographed sensory experience. So we feed you, we move you, we surround you in smells, we touch your body, and each of these sensory experiences has been specifically designed to unearth or unpack or relate to a moment in the music and deepen the way that the audience kind of associate with that part or listen to that part.
So that sounds incredible, Stephanie, but for a band who are just starting out, they're like, I've got to pair the audience members with dancers, that's a lot. So if you're starting out on day one with a blank sheet of paper in front of you, what are the first steps a creator can take to make their gigs and live experience more immersive?
I always find that the thing that is the most creative space to exist in at the beginning is in two spaces. One, you have to give yourself time to exist in the land of possibility. And that's an exercise, because so often as creatives, we're obsessed, and we need to be obsessed with the outcome. But the first step of really appreciating what it is to think about live music differently is to suspend everything you've known before, to suspend everything that you've seen before, and to allow yourself to exist inside your imagination and do that with your music. So very simply, what that means is put some speakers in your room and turn off the lights, put a blindfold on or something similar, lie down, get some paper and some pens and listen to the music that you've made. Let it trigger your imagination and let it take it to a visual place or a story place or a scent place or a food place or a memory place. It doesn't matter where it takes you, but just let it take you there. Embrace your sound in a new kind of way. Use that time and be religious about this. Use that time to be possibility focused. It doesn't need to be, your dreams don't need to be something that can actually happen in real life. So then you take that information, whether it's that you've written it down or whether it's that you've created voice notes or whether it's just stored within your imagination, take that information and read it. See what you discover. So this is just an exercise of putting yourself in the position of an audience member, experiencing your music for the first time, feeling it as if it is pure sound, rather than feeling it like it's because often as an artist, we associate our music with the expression of our internal monologue, our perception of the universe, but we kind of have to get away from that and listen to it as the music communicates. And what you'll find is that there will be some experiential threads that you can start to really unpick and say, okay, so let's say I experience my music like I'm driving a fast How do I then take this experience of driving a fast car in the middle of, I don't know, let's say a nightscape city. Let's say that's how you experience it. How do you take that core feeling and translate it into a live installation, is the next question.
So how do you do that? So is it that you have to kind of approach a gig from a 360 experience, starting with the posters? And
I mean, listen, every single creative has to get to know their own process. This is the most powerful thing that you can do as a creative. So my process at this stage is to consider what is it that I bring to an experience. I know that I'm an extremely, I like to direct an experience, let's put it that way. I'm a bit of a control freak, is what I'm trying to say gently, and I think a lot of artists are that way. So I know that I like to direct things, but I also know that I need collaborators to fill in the gaps that I don't do, that I can't do. I'm not a visual person. I can't make things, I can't build things with my hands. I can't design an acoustics of a space. So if I'm thinking I want to create the sensation of an ocean of sound washing over the bodies of the audience, and I want to accentuate that with some kind of lighting or something that potentially audience members can hold, I know that immediately I want to get a designer, and then I also want to get an acoustics expert. So I seek collaborators is the first step. And with those collaborators, I share very awkwardly what my initial creative vision is. I say, I kind of want the sound to wash over you like an ocean, and that each collaborator will bring their particular expertise to help me unpick what it is that I'm actually saying, put inspiration in front of me that I would never have known without them. And together we start to build a creative vision. So I would say you start with your creative vision, find collaborators that fill in the gaps that you can't fill, and then be very, very clear on what is your personal capacity. So that means to me, so often when we're thinking about doing things that we've never done before, or when we're embarking on new creative adventures, we take advantage of our bodies and our skill sets, and we treat our bodies badly. We try to do more than we can, and that means that we end up creating work when we're really tired or really overworked, basically, which is never a good state to make work in. So be real about your personal capacity, financially as well as time-based. And this is the kind of brutal reality check, but I let that bit wait.
And Stephanie, can you tell us about getting perhaps non-musical collaborators in to listen to your work and what that can give creators and musicians?
Well, I suppose the first thing is they're not inside your brain. So they do something really interesting, which is experience your music innocently, through their own expertise. And that can mean 1,000 different things. But the most pleasurable part of that is that they challenge what you think your music is, but they also affirm what you think your music is. So it brings this kind of interesting creative energy to you. And also they have different imaginations to you. So they will hear music and imagine an experience in a completely different way to the way that you do. If you are able to kind of relax into the knowledge and the expertise that these collaborators have, then you could make something beyond your own individual imagination, which is what makes it such a rewarding process.
So when it comes to designing a gig, day one of a project, whatever, you want to take it out on the road, you want to take it to the stage. What are the first few things that managers and creatives can and should do when designing a gig?
Well, I'm a big fan of creativity. So I really always think it's the best thing to bring a group together to start congregating confidently around a creative vision. So, and I think we don't spend enough time embracing different with gigs. We have to approach it differently. So that might mean lots of different things to you and your team. But a really good first step is just doing that exercise where you turn the lights off, put the music on, draw and get creative, suspend in that kind of state for a minute, and then get back together and share kind of what you experience from the music. And then it's really a process of creating yourself a brief, thinking about what is actually possible for you to deliver. So a brief might include conversations and ideas around what is sacred, as in what is unchangeable about what you will be delivering. For instance, most of us have spaces in mind, and gig spaces have their own architecture inbuilt that is unbreakable and unchangeable. So what are the spaces that you might be performing in, and how can you get the most out of these spaces? And you might be thinking about the kind of the placement of the stage, the placement of the bar, the technical equipment that's actually available to you inside of the space. Write it down. That forms part of your essential brief. Where is it? Where are these locations? Who's coming? You know, all these questions that you have to ask to figure out how this experience will manifest. And then it's really about considering what feelings do you want to evoke in the audience. And we do this all the time as musicians anyway, but it's a very direct question. You know, how do you want your audience to leave this experience? If they were making a facial expression, what facial expression would they be making? What would they be doing with their bodies? How would they be sharing about this with their friends? Them. And then what stimulus material do you have? What are you drawing on? So obviously we've got the key stimulus, which is your music, your world, but actually what are all the other things that we can be inspired by, that we can realize or put into our experiences, like films, TV, artists, sculpture, food. I don't mind where you draw your inspiration from. It's about building a palette of different types of stimulus material that you can take inspiration from. And then think about how many people you actually will get inside of that space and how many people you want to reach, whether that's in a kind of concrete, in the room experiential feel, or whether that is digitally. And how do you want to reach those people? And then how much money is there? You know, how much time is there? You know, if you've got to deliver something next week, you've got 500 quid. That's quite a different brief from if you've got a year and 150,000. You know, these are two different spaces that you might find yourself in. So how can you create something that is too brief, that moves you, that is actually going to happen? Then once you've kind of rested on these kind of parameters for yourself, it gives you lots to kick against, which means that your creativity is very directed, right? So if you know that you're creating something for a small, intimate environment, 100 audience members, what is the best experience you can deliver inside of that space? And then, like I said, with the concept, once you've got this feeling, this thing that you love, this concept, push it as far as it can humanly go, and that's something that you and your team need to commit to. Again, if you're going to do something differently, you have to work differently, you have to commit differently, and that's something that often needs to be spoken out loud with you and your team.
That's brilliant. And in another tutorial, we're talking about the musician as an experience creator, but you have spoken before about the musician as communicator. And as a communicator, what should they bear in mind when they're doing a live event?
Who are you talking to? And how does that interaction happen? And I would imagine getting those groups of audience members in a room ahead of time so that you can test your experiences out on people and bodies and look and listen to the way that they respond to this experience and treat it as learning. Because if audiences, which they will do, move or experience your work in a way that you didn't anticipate, this is information, and you can either choose to adjust your experience to accommodate their feelings or their reactions, or you can choose to be more, maybe to adjust the experience so that it is clearer what you're asking for your audience to actually do.
I'm just wondering if you could speak to us about discovering your concept or the concept as an artist. What does that mean in practice?
I think the concept is this kind of elusive thing. It's almost like I would approach it in two different ways. I approach it from a very practical standpoint, doing the work. So I mean, reading around the topics that matter to me, whether that's in the news or whether that's academic literature or whether that's nonfiction or fiction, feeding myself, inspiring myself so that I have lots of inspiration to draw upon, lots of other artists' opinions, see the work that relates to things that you care about. And then there's also this thing of kind of relaxing into what your concept is. There's 1,000 different things I think that we tend to think that we are or want to be as artists. We're constantly trying to be something, to be the thing that will break through the noise, right? And this leads us in all kind of funny directions. But I think the most important thing is to relax into the artist that you are and then push that, because that's where the most interesting individual stuff comes. And so it's this kind of this dual process of holding the inspiration from outside, embracing all the things that you love from other artists, and integrating that with kind of who you are and what your music is really communicating, and then trying to find a way to distill these ideas into a concept that lots of creatives can hang on to, something that inspires a team, that we can all come back to at the end of the day. At the end, when we get confused creatively, we can all come back to the core concept, which might be very simple, like I want to embrace a sense of euphoria, right? Or I want to create an experience that feels like the ocean. I don't know what your concept might be. These are very like conceptual, but they give a sense of a feeling that many artists and creatives can use as a springboard.
That's great, Stephanie, and I'm sure you've given lots of inspiration to people watching these tutorials. And for more information on this particular tutorial, you can go to discoverrevelland.today, sign up to the newsletter and join the community there.